What's up, everybody? Some tour date updates before we get into today's episode. So, my new stand-up show, Anti-Fascist Pasta Night, is going to be in Edinburgh in August as part of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I'm so excited. We got some preview shows going on in the States. In the meantime, April 4th, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, May 16th, Los Angeles, California, and June 5th, New York City. Real excited for New York City because Piace and Italian Americans for Zoran, some of the lefty Italian American organizations that really inspired me to call the show Anti-Fascist Pasta Night, they're going to be in attendance. It's going to be super fun. So Pittsburgh, Los Angeles, New York, tickets at romplicone.com. And if I'm not coming to a city near you and you're not going to be in Edinburgh, which I know we're only doing a few select cities here, there is going to be a virtual option on April 18th as part of a virtual arts festival. I'm going to be doing Anti-Fascist Pasta Night on April 18th. That is on Zoom, and that's a free event. You can get information on that at romplicone.com. So Pittsburgh, Zoom, Los Angeles, New York City, romplicone.com for all tickets and information. And of course, speaking of virtual, Left at Wall is out now. If you have not watched Left at Wall, please do. A fun anti-capitalist comedy about family that sort of gives a little nod to the GameStop event. romplicone.com for all the places you can watch Left at Wall. And I recommend Tubi because Tubi is free. All right, enjoy today's episode. Episode 129, Zac Polston. Zac Polston, known on YouTube as Zac from the Vanguard, is a YouTuber, journalist, and filmmaker. He's the co-host of the Lefty Breadtube show, The Vanguard. They do a new show from a progressive point of view and dissect the inner fightings of indie left media. Also, they talk film, sports, and culture as two dudes from Kansas City. Please welcome to the show, Zac Polston. Zac Polston, a guy who I've known for a while, but just learned your last name.
Yeah, I've had dinner at your house, actually, and
It's Zac from the Vanguard. That's all.
We were talking about a little bit of that Joey Ramone kind of a deal, where Gavin, me, we're just like, whatever, we're part of the band.
Yeah. Zac Vanguard, Gavin Vanguard. It's just like, yeah, like I did say off mic, that's how you guys are in my phone. So it makes sense. Love it. Well, dude, good to know your last name. That's exciting. I always like to start at the beginning. So has it always been Kansas City? Give me the Zac origin story. Where are you from?
Yeah, I was born in Research Medical Center, which due to budget cuts and funding, I believe no longer has a maternity ward, but is still operating on the east side of Kansas City. So shout out to all of the East Side KC brothers and sisters. That's where I was born. I can get my birth certificate printed off downtown in Jackson County because, yeah, if you're, a real Kansas City bro, they used to do that back in the day, and so I'm really proud of that. A lot of people moving to Kansas City for the first time. Gavin and I have been holding it down here our whole lives. I think Gavin was actually born in Illinois, but either way, I was born here. We do the show here, and it's always been Kansas City, yeah.
It's one of the few major cities I've never performed in randomly. Like, not
comedy sucks here, man. Everybody I've ever talked to, there are people that are big acts, recently it started to turn around, but for a long time, all the major comics were just skipping Kansas City. And now there's some effort by some really cool people that I don't know personally, but have had a lot of success in the broader comedic world. And they've shown a lot of love coming back to Kansas City and doing local shows and letting some local performers come up. So if anybody's familiar with the podcaster Caleb Huron, that's another Kansas City guy, shows a lot of love to Kansas City, does a lot of fundraising with local orgs. So him and some other folks have been really making a concerted effort to bring stand-up back to Kansas City. But for my entire youth, it was like a total drought. I remember the one time, this old comedy podcast I listened to back in the day, the one time they brought up Kansas City, it was just to say that the guy who booked the only comedy club in Kansas City sucked, and that's why every comedian skipped it. So I don't know if that's true, but growing up, not a lot of comedy in Kansas City. So it makes sense that you would have not made it through.
Yeah, I mean, I never heard anything like that. Like, I never heard anything bad. It's just randomly, like, routing never brought me there. It's just one of, like I've done St. Louis a few times in a couple different capacities. Like, I did college there once, and then I think I did I think I did like a club there once too, but yeah, randomly Kansas City. I just never. And then the state of Kansas, randomly, it's one of a handful of states I've just never performed in. I was supposed to do Topeka once, but I think like the club ended up closing like a month before I was supposed to be there. And then everyone always talks about Lawrence, but I've just
Gavin and I were in Lawrence yesterday. Actually, it was cool.
Yeah, isn't it? That's like their kind of that's their kind of like cultural, like that's their big spot, right? Like that's sort of I hate to say the Austin of Kansas, because now Austin has a different vibe than
it's funny you mentioned that, because it actually is like back in the day, Texas was like red, right? It was
sure.
And it was Wild West. Kansas is still red, except Laura Kelly. She's a blue governor, and she's actually done some positive things as far as like, blue governor, red state is concerned, got rid of some grocery taxes, things like that. But Lawrence really is like, when you watch Richard Linklater's Slacker, I don't know if you ever saw that, but people in the audience, it's like a time capsule of Austin, Texas in 1989, low budget kind of a movie, but it's just like kind of slice of life deal. It really does remind me of modern day Lawrence, Kansas. William Burroughs lived there until he died after he retired from writing. And it really does have a thriving main street with a bunch of locally owned businesses and shops. So I try and get out there, at least every couple months and support some cool bookstores, which are like, union run and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, dude. I mean, I love the Midwestern hippie lefty college towns. I mean, I went to IU, so I got nothing but love for those places. I just never
made it down. Well, one of these days you get down here, we'll take you to a Royals game. We don't have a professional hockey team, but what we do have is the Missouri Mavericks, and so there's twice as much fighting.
Are they AHL or are they?
Yeah, they're AHL.
Oh yeah, dude. My buddy was an AHL guy. He coaches now, but he played AHL for years through his 20s and stuff. And yeah, they're bruisers, man. They really throw down there.
They do, man. It's crazy.
Like, holy shit. Yeah, that's awesome.
Giant guys. So anyway.
Yeah, dude. Well, so getting back to you, so what was growing up like? What did you kind of migrate toward as you were? What were the formative Zac years all about?
Oh God. I was a little bit of a wild and crazy kid, man. I was a little bit of a hellraiser, I guess. Grew up in Bible country. Grew up, as kind of I mentioned, I grew up in the suburbs outside of Kansas City with my mom, and then my dad lived downtown in the like more urban area. And when I was a kid, he ran like a cell phone and pager store. So it was just like a really different vibe back then. It was, and then growing up, going back to the suburbs, smoking a lot of pot, just like getting in trouble and going to punk shows. And
when did you get into cannabis? What was that?
Probably like junior year of high school, sophomore year of high school. Gavin and I started, so not like crazy young, but definitely like too young if you're a child out there listening. But just one of those kinds of deals. And
so how long have you and Gavin been friends?
Gavin and I met in 5th grade. Yeah, I'll mention Gavin a bunch just because him and I have been like fixtures of each other's lives pretty much over the course of it.
That's amazing. And now you have this collaboration that is going well, which we're going to work up to. But yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, I wondered how long you guys knew each other.
Yeah, we go way back. Walnut Grove Elementary. We started, I swear, this sounds so cheesy. We've worked it into like we're a married couple. We've worked it into a back and forth, because normally when we get interviewed, we interview together and people will be like, how'd you meet? Blah, blah, blah. But I swear to God, we were the two kids whose moms packed our lunches like almost every day. Like we were not allowed to eat school lunches. And so, we would both be the first kids to sit down because we would have our fucking packed lunches. So Gavin and I would sit down across from each other, the first kids to sit down at the table. All the other kids are like waiting in line for hot food. And we realized that the both of us had extremely politically plugged in parents, except the difference was Gavin's parents were woke liberals that actually, Gavin's mom has base politics. Whenever I hear about it, I'm like, that's what your mom said? Really cool. My mom works for a Republican, and my dad has like been either Republican or libertarian voter his entire life. So when I was growing up, it was very much like rah, rah, like we have to invade Iraq, like rah, rah, like support the troops. George Bush is a hero. Like, these people hate America kind of stuff. And then I was having all these debates with Gavin about whether John McCain was going to win the election or whether Barack Obama was going to win the election. And yeah, it just kind of like became the beginning of our friendship.
Wow. So you guys were the first people to sit down in the lunchroom and then you would talk about politics. So you made sure nobody else wanted to sit near you.
Exactly.
So you basically you alienated your own little corner. There was like a Zach and Gavin force field.
Yeah.
Or did you bring other people in?
No, it was just us. There was nobody else. Nobody cared about politics at that time. No, and honestly, it's funny. I feel like we've always kind of had like niche interests, because Gavin and I were really into movies and we were really into politics, and we were the only kids that were really into movies and really into politics. And I know now it's kind of become cool because of A24's resurgent, or not resurgence, but like, extreme popularity boom. Which when Gavin and I first heard about A24, we were stoked, and nobody knew what the hell that was when we were sophomores in high school. But we had really niche interests. And so even though we ended up going to different schools after elementary school, Gavin went to a different middle school and I went to a different middle school, and we still kind of stayed friends. And then in high school, once I got a car, we started kicking it together really heavily again. And, that kind of
When did you guys discover punk rock? Because you mentioned going to shows and stuff.
Yeah, so Gavin was never into punk. Gavin never really got into that phase at all. But when I was going to high school, I had a really, really good friend named Nadine Alzubi, and she was into, we went to go see Jack White when he came to town together. That's how we became friends. And she was like, bro, if you like this kind of shit, you should come to like a real show. And I was like, what do you mean like a real show? And she was like, oh, this is about my homie's basement. And so we go down to like Kansas City, and I saw this band that got some national prominence a little bit. It was this band called Sheer Mag. And they're like a kind of like DIY punk group. They do a lot of like, I don't know if they do anymore, but they did a lot of house shows for a while. And it was just jam packed, full of kids, and I say kids, probably like people like 17 to 24, and, a lot of energy, some local people. And then I just kind of like got hooked into the scene. I was like, oh, this is cool. You start learning about like other bands, people, are in bands, and the, punk scene in Kansas City is pretty small. And it does have a little bit of like a cliquey streak to it, but it was also, really a fun time for me growing up.
Dude, and there's been some amazing bands. I mean, I was obsessed. And this is going back before, honestly, both of our times. But like, did you ever hear of Kill Creek?
No.
Oh, dude, they're a legendary Kansas City band. They kind of
that makes sense because there's a Kill Creek Park right by where I live.
Oh, that must be.
And I used to go longboarding at Kill Creek Park. That has to 100%.
That's probably inspired their name. And then, dude, there was sort of a another inclination that was, I don't know if they were directly affiliated, like if there were any band members that cross-pollinated or not, but there was this other band that is still active called the Casket Lottery.
Oh, interesting.
And look them both up, man. I got to see the Casket Lottery because they were at Fest and in 2025, and I got to perform on the comedy stage at Fest in last year, which was pretty freaking cool. Like teenage me would have been so jazzed. Yeah. Grown up me was jazzed too, but teenage me would have really been like, dude, you won. Holy shit. But yeah, Casket Lottery was there. So I got to catch their set. And,
not exactly DIY punk, but I had a similar experience when I got to see the Get Up Kids, who were they have a lot of local lore where I grew up in Olathe.
Yeah, dude.
And they were Bernie guys, which I thought was dope. And so I ended up catching them for the first time when I was in Tulsa. And they opened for Bernie Sanders at his rally, and I was like, "Oh, this is fucking cool!" Because my mom's house when I was growing up was like right across the street from Olathe South High School, even though I never went there, and that was where those guys all went to high school. So they had big local lore.
They're legends everywhere. Yeah. They were at Fest too, and they did Something to Write Home About in its entirety.
Oh fuck yeah!
Yeah, man, it was awesome because I'm like watching it with all the other comics that were at the festival, basically, because like a lot of us knew each other, and it's just so funny because like we're all just like, being comics that are crossing paths on the road at a festival, like busting balls and stuff like that. And then it's like they're playing Holiday, like a bunch of dudes my age are just crying and shit. It's just they're just like, yeah, man, one ticket to Tear Town, population me. But dude, that's Kansas City. Shout out to the Kansas City music scene. Well, so what eventually did you buy into? What your parents were selling? Were you a John McCain guy at first?
It's as much as a 10-year-old buys into anything, and it was like the environment was like, support America, right? And don't support the terrorists. Like my grandpa, he owned a pawn shop for a while before he owned the switched to like cell phones and pagers and then whatever after that. And he had all these playing cards that had like the America's Most Wanted terrorists on them, and like, you know, all kinds of shit like that. Like, this is the world that we, grew up in. It was very, very right wing. And so that was just what I thought the reality was. You know, when you're 10 years old, you kind of just live the reality that your parents tell you. You think Santa Claus is real. You know, they could tell you that, you know, whatever, and you're going to believe it because that's what your parents tell you. And then you get to middle school, right? And I met my first homie that was gay, and I was like, what, you're gay? And he was like, yep. And I was like, whoa, that's fucking crazy. And then you start like putting together the world a little bit for yourself. You're like 13 years old. You're like, oh, okay, like I can think for myself. And then there was just a whoosh, tidal wave backlash. Then it was like, I'm a fucking atheist. Fuck you. I hate everything about religion. I hate Christianity. I hate Republicans. I'll fucking fight any of you. And so that was kind of my experience the next couple of years, writing in the school paper, like, you know, testing the boundaries of my First Amendment privileges, you know, talking about how, you know, the Church of Satan wants to do this. And, you know, you guys are, you know, just these kinds of stuff. And that was how I got into journalism. Was I had an English teacher that was a really good guy. And he was like, you know, like, you need to channel all of your frustrations with the world into fucking something a little bit productive. You should sign up for my newspaper, and it's a class during the day, so you don't have to show up after school, which was a big selling point to me because I was not going to fucking go if it was after school. And then I got really, really into it, and I ended up staying after school all the time. But then I got into writing about politics, and that was during the Sam Brownback years in Kansas, which is where I was going to school at the time. And people who know anything about Kansas politics at that time know that Brownback basically ran our entire state's economy into the ground. He was the national laughingstock. So that really, really continued to fuel my fire of hatred for pretty much everything that was the place that I grew up. And just continued to, then Bernie Sanders happened, continued to do all of that, continued to mold into the lefty that I consider myself to be now, which is, you know, more of a socialist kind of a guy.
So when you mentioned Bernie, something that I've still been wrestling with, that I'm still trying to figure out, and I have a couple thoughts about it, but I really want to know your thoughts, especially, you know, as like a Gen Z. How did we lose so many people post Bernie? Because I feel like, I mean, for me, it was like 2016. All of a sudden, it was like, holy shit, we're not as alone as we thought we were. You know, like finally, you know, because it's like I remember being excited about Dennis Kucinich back in 2008 when, like, you know, people were like, the world's not ready for this yet. And then 8 years later, all of a sudden, like, the world's freaking ready for it because of, you know, a lot of promises not delivered by Obama, I think. And so they're ready for it. And then all of a sudden, you know, everything that could go wrong did. But it's like, how did we then lose as many people as we did?
I mean, it's a great question. It's a super fair question. I think it's probably a combination of things. I would look at it by different factions of people, because I think everybody responded to that differently. And I kind of have a habit of looking for context throughout history. Obviously, history is not a perfect analogy for anything. There are limitations to those kinds of callbacks. But if you look at what happened to America after the 60s, right? And you have it all kind of culminate in the 72 election. You could even say in the 68 election, right? Outside in Chicago, outside the DNC, everybody's skulls getting cracked open. They have Eugene McCarthy is the guy that gets the most votes, but a backroom shady deal. They put Hubert Humphrey at the top of the ticket to run against Richard Nixon. He gets absolutely curb stomped, right? And you kind of have that be the beginning of the end of the countercultural revolution in America. You see, okay, we're going to get a little bit of a cookie in 76, when after the extreme and brazen corruption of Richard Nixon forces him to resign because he put his thumb on the scale so badly during the 72 primary and did a bunch of other shit to cover it up, right? For people who are wanting the Reader's Digest on the Watergate scandal. You then get Jimmy Carter, right? And Jimmy Carter's a one-term president that business in America was totally against, that the alphabet agencies in America was totally determined to handicap. That's why you have the hostage situation go so poorly. That's why you have the oil prices in the country go out of control. That's why there's rampant shrinkflation, right? And what happens after that? The American people get scared and they go straight into Reaganism. And so I think if we look at that period of a decade where we go from 1968, where the American people are, have elected Eugene McCarthy in the Democratic primary, and the government and the DNC and the powers that be pull the rug out from underneath them, and they say, no, you're having the establishment guy, you're eating the shit sandwich, to the American people all rallying together to, in historic numbers, elect not just Richard Nixon, but also Ronald Reagan, a fucking movie star who had no business being president. And if you kind of see what happened there, you had people break off into all sorts of groups. You had people say, I'm throwing my hands up in the air. It clearly doesn't work when we have a progressive option. I'm going to support the Jimmy Carter guy. I'm going to support the Gary Hart guy, Kerry Hart, whatever that guy's fucking name was. I'm going to support the Walter Mondales. Those guys aren't going to win, right? Those guys will never get the job done. Those guys are the Gavin Newsoms. Those guys are, the Pete Buttigieg's, the Josh Shapiro's, where they're constantly elevated in the party, but they don't have what it takes to actually lead anybody. But a certain element of the people who really truly want progressive change, people who really truly want to have a new vision for America, they think they've been so broken and destroyed and they're so disillusioned by the system that they convince themselves that that's the only way because that's how it's always been. Then you have another group of people who are also part of this radical vision for America to change that say the system's broken, it's corrupt, I can't be a part of it anymore. And you say, okay, I'm not participating in this. I'm going to participate in local organizing. God bless these people. They've really make the world go round. But they're not interested in playing the fucking, I'm going to put all my chips in the Democratic Party basket anymore. Okay, that's another faction. You then have to account for the fact that people like what's popular. And when Bernie Sanders was filling up fucking arenas, people were like, I actually might go check that out. So there are people who just want to be a part of whatever's happening, and they're not necessarily motivated to go ahead and push forward for themselves. And so once that's no longer happening, they're going to kind of like take a look around and see what else is happening. And then, of course, the last group is going to be the cynical opportunists, right? These are the people who at that time saw a lane to make money, right? Because where there's a lot of people and where there's a lot of interest and a lot of eyeballs, there's a lot of dollars, right? And I think that, it's a matter of taking account and saying, okay, who was there just for the dollars and who was there just to cynically capitalize off of a genuine movement. Let's make sure those people are not a part of our movement moving forward. And let's work with the people who we know agree with us and who are actively making the world better to get all those two other groups, the people who have been so disillusioned that they think they have no other choice but to participate in the man-eating machine, and the people who are just looking to go with the crowd and have community. How do we, as the people who actually care about this, actually want to move the ball forward, kind of reignite those people? And then this time, make sure that we don't allow the cynical opportunists to take the lead and suck up all the attention.
Yeah, that's man, I wish I had the in the pocket answer for all that. I think that's what we're still trying to figure out, Yeah. I mean, it's weird because it's just like when you really think about it, there's only been about a 5 or 6 year postmortem, because it's like there's 2016 and 2020. But it's been long enough that it's just like, well, why are we kind of all running around going like, well, what the fuck happens next? Which I get why. It's because everything was just so fractured, and also the world at large had no pause button. But it's still kind of wild to wrap your head around. Well, let me ask you this, because you brought up. I asked this question. Everybody who is in the YouTube indie media space or breadtube space, whatever people are calling it these days, I always ask them this question: do you think that space overall has helped with the cause for progressive change?
I think it really matters if people have realistic expectations for what is happening when people watch YouTube. And I think that's why Gavin and I, for as much as people don't like it, and some people really, really don't like it, Gavin and I have been really intentional about kind of embracing the sillier element of the fact that, a lot of people take themselves very seriously on YouTube. And we are always super transparent that we don't call ourselves journalists. We don't call ourselves, political analysts or anything like that. We are YouTubers, and we're proud to be YouTubers because I make content that I put on YouTube, and I want people to, when they've had a long day at work, take off of their shoes, put them up on the couch and have a laugh and understand that there are people who feel the same way that they do and are outraged by the same issues. And then on top of that, I want to make sure that I'm like subtly educating them and making sure that they don't fall for any obvious media scam and that they're not giving their money to people who don't deserve it. And that if they are going to give their money to someone, that it goes to one of the many organizations that are really going to use that money well and responsibly and all those kinds of things. So I think if people are looking for a really, really straight, like Democracy Now! Kind of a new show to come in and educate people and become a fixture of their diet and, really help them understand the world better. That's a really, really, big goal, but I think it's an attainable goal, right? If you think you're going to start the podcast and that's going to lead to a general strike or something like that, I think that that's not the strategy, because those kinds of things take a lot of trust from people that you're going to have to develop human relationships with. And that's the one thing that Gavin and I are happy to promote people who are on the ground doing great organizing, but we also are really, really careful to remind everyone that we are YouTubers doing a show and those people are doing the work. I'm happy to go to it. Gavin and I, we really, really tried to, use whatever weight that we have, very small amount of weight, but whatever weight we had to oppose the construction of a new ICE facility in Kansas City. I was at every single freaking protest that I could find. We were outside of the fucking, venture capital firm with the guys that own the warehouse, chanting, fucking, holding signs, doing all of that. It was cold as hell and it was successful. But of course, all of the real energy and all of the real activism was done by the people who were on the ground. It was done by people like Air. It was done by, we have a great city councilman, Jonathan Duncan, who really, really took initiative on that and helped them find a new buyer and was like, hey, you're not going to lose any money. Just, think about all of the bad press you're already getting. You want to avoid that. Here's another warehouse conglomerate that will buy that, use it. It doesn't go to ICE. You guys get paid and we sweep this under the rug. So he did great work. And it's great to amplify that. And it's great to be like, hey, if you guys are in Kansas City, we're going to be here fucking 12th and Walnut. The march begins. We're going to go and fucking do it. Bundle up. There's hand warmers. There's hot cocoa. Let's get after this. But the people who are getting that job done are not the podcasters, right? They're the people who are dedicating their whole fucking life, to doing all of that.
No, I feel you, man. And yeah, I think it takes, you juxtapose y'all and Democracy Now! I mean, I think it takes both. Mm-hmm. you need to have both. And I am the biggest advocate for a general strike, but it's going to take a hell of a lot more than a podcast to get that done.
Right. And I think it's just important that we're honest about it, because I totally agree. I just think that when people say that, it's important that you remind them, so many people in this country are holding on by this much. They're going to need to have some assurances that they're going to still have a roof over their head. They're going to need to have some assurances that their kid's not going to starve, that they can still have Medicaid. It's incumbent upon the people who are going to call upon that, that general strike, to have put some, you
got to define
safety.
It.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you really do have to define it. And because it's a general strike. And I'm really happy that it's in the vernacular now more than it ever has been. And I'm happy to see these pop-ups happening. I think it's a great first step, but that's not there's a lot more to it than that. It can't just be hey, we're not going to buy anything on this day. And it's well, hey, great first step, necessary first step, but that's not a lasting general strike. That's just definitionally not what it is, and that's also not how we're going to have something sustainable. So yeah, I hear you. What I like about you guys is just how, for the longest time in this space, there was sort of a coastal vibe about it. And then it's you guys are just two dudes in Kansas City. You talk about movies, you talk about sports too. There's just a certain approachability about all of it, and that's what I really appreciate about you guys, because I feel and I want your thoughts on this. I feel sometimes on the left and in these media spaces there's this vibe where it's you're almost supposed to not be engaged with culture. There's almost a guilt associated with it. I've always, as a comic, I've always found that weird, and I don't always know how to respond to it, and I've always been this is not how you get more people over to your side. That's so that's, I think that's that's a big reason why I've always really liked you guys, because you guys are sort of like an anecdote to all that. And I've always really appreciated that about you.
Well, dude, well, thank you for saying that, because one of the things that I guess I should say that I'm always a little self-conscious about is obviously people do take all of this really seriously, and there's so much horrible things happening. But I completely agree that you have to engage with the fun stuff too on the left. And it's like, I'm not Amy Goodman, right? I'm not Crystal Ball. I'm not Ryan Grimm. I'm not breaking stories, right? Like if you guys hear a good take from me, it's probably because I read Ken Klippenstein's Substack, and I wow, yeah, I can't remember where I read this, but fucking. I'm kidding mostly, but it's like we expose ourselves to a lot of good media. And so after that, it's like, okay, we've relayed who we think is really on point, but what then? Like, again, it kind of goes back to kicking your feet up. Like Gavin and I love talking about the movies. Gavin and I love going to a restaurant and being like, oh wow, this is the oldest restaurant in Missouri. Like, thank God they're holding on. They've been operational since 1878. We drove like 2 hours the other day to go to some place that was super old. And it was like, want to make sure that place stays in business, right? It's really hard for restaurants right now, things like that. We'll make a fun video about it and put it on our alt channel, and it'll just be like, anybody who cares about this kind of thing can come along on one of our adventures. And it's just like a fun little change of pace, but we kind of were intentional about it because we looked at the scene of what, in 2019, when we were really getting ready to start the show, 2020, and we were like, what does it have? And we started doing the interviews like everyone else, interview Howie Hawkins, interview Noam Chomsky, interview Corey Bush. She came on our show. We interviewed tons and tons of people. I don't regret that. But it was like, okay, we're clearly doing something that's already being done at a higher level with a wider audience on YouTube. So what can we do that's totally different? We tried to just be like, all right, dude, we're both like probably the only 24-year-old guys that are out starting a show about leftist niche internet politics. Let's just be ourselves. Let's just embrace it. And then when people like Jank are like, oh, you guys are just silly and Billy over here, we're like, that's actually a great fucking name.
It's so funny how you guys bring out. I wanted to say this on your show, and I will at some point. I'll repeat it, but it's like, I love how you guys bring out the inner boomer in so many people. Like you just, and I don't know why. Like I can't relate to it. Like because I just like, I'm like, why would you get so upset about this? But it's funny how you like. It's like they're shaking their fist, like, you mangy kids. Like, it's like, what the fuck? Like, and the joke's funny. On you now. Like,
yeah, I worry we're approaching the time where it's going to be a little bit harder for us to get away with the like explicit hijinks. We've tried to clean up our act just a tad, I mean, and that's the one thing I will say, right? We started the show when we were really young, and I kind of always give this PSA that like when we started the show, I was just like fucking throwing bombs in every direction, right? Like it was just like anybody who didn't think exactly how I thought and feel exactly how I felt was like catching fucking blows, and we felt like nobody was listening to it. That was irresponsible of me. So I do feel like I've tried to grow and be a little bit less of a like a petulant child. So I think some of that was what brought out the boomer energy. People were like, how are these fucking kids that just say whatever the fuck they want, like growing in popularity like this? Like, did you see that? Like, they're going to have to run a correction about that tomorrow. And it's like, but we do run corrections when we get shit wrong, and we try our best to never get anything wrong. And, we try and be good faith the whole time. And so I would imagine that's what it is. Like, people are pissed off that, there's a guy like, Cenk Uygur is spending a lot of money trying to compete in this space, and yet we're just like kind of set up in my house and we have no credentials. And
you make him mad. It's really funny. No, man, I feel like, well, it's like one of those things, like everybody learns and grows on the air if you're going to put yourself out there. That just comes with the territory, especially when you're free from the gatekeeper of traditional broadcasting, which every internet personality is. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I've made mistakes on air before and corrected the record. I'll make mistakes in the future. Like, it's for sure going to happen. Like, it doesn't go away. It comes with being human. I will make strategic decisions. Some of them will be great. Some of them will be wrong. Like, that's, if that's ever not happening for you, it's because you're not participating. Yeah. It's not because you're not getting anything wrong. It's because you're not participating.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think it's important to be honest about it, though, and be like, if you go back and find a clip of me from 6 years ago, like there's a chance that I might be like, well, I was like, I needed to settle down a little bit, And so, yeah, it's just natural part of, I think you're totally right. It's a natural part of like learning how to also be funny, right? Because that's the other element of this. Like, we're about myself in particular. Like I'm really trying to be funny the whole time that we're on air. Right? I'm really trying to make the audience laugh. And so you have to balance that with being like news coded show, right? Like you don't want to, spread any misinformation, but you also don't want to miss like a hilarious punchline, even if it's over the top and obnoxious.
Totally, man. Yeah. Well, so how did you guys, what went into the, how did the Vanguard come to be? Like was it just like, hey, let's make the most of all those years alone at the lunch table?
Yeah,
we could have been streaming this the whole time if the technology had been around.
There were so many different versions of like how Gavin and I were not going to have to work day jobs. I swear to God, it was just like, how are we going to figure this out? We do not want to work day jobs. So we were, I'll be totally upfront. We did not want to have day jobs. And we were both working really shitty jobs in college that we hated. And it was just like, oh my God, the thought of doing that for 60 more years or whatever. So we were like, okay, we want to be writers. We want to be filmmakers. We want to be people that do this kind of a thing. And so we would do podcasts in Gavin's dorm room sometimes. And we would do like fucking, 3 hours on Mulholland Drive. Nobody's ever heard it. Like, oh, here's an hour and a half on the Olivia Assayas film, Personal Shopper, and nobody would ever hear that. And so we start there. And then we start this blog called Milk Mag, which is a whole fucking, story that turns into the Vanguard blog. And we were covering like a local scandal with this guy, Eric Greitens, who was the former governor of Missouri, who did a bunch of fucked up stuff. And then we were writing articles about Josh Hawley and Claire McCaskill in 2018. And it just never really stopped, like just kept writing. And then, the 2020 primary is going on and we're writing these blog posts and nobody's reading them. But Gavin and I are putting like our heart and souls into them. We're writing every single fucking day, editing each other's work, like really collabing on stuff, trying to put out this great content on a website that we built on WordPress. We didn't have any idea what we were doing. And we just kept doing it until finally Gavin is like, let's try fucking putting our shit on YouTube. I booked an interview with Howie Hawkins. We're going to interview him for our first ever show. And so we interview Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker, who was his running mate. And then we interview Cori Bush, who obviously went on to win her election. And we interviewed this other guy, Brent Welder, who had run in Kansas back in the day in the district that Gavin and I grew up in.
Was he a Justice Democrat?
Yeah, he was a Justice Democrat. He got kneecapped by Sharice Davis at the very end of his run, but he was a super base guy, super great guy. Shout out to Brent. He's awesome local guy, and his wife does amazing work as well as an attorney. And so, got those guys on the show, and that was the beginning of YouTube. And then if you remember, Ron, I know you do, the movement for a People's Party and the way that the Jimmy Dore show and all of that was intersecting, we were like, we should talk about this. We should stop interviewing and we should call up the people who are involved in this. And so we hit up a bunch of people who had volunteered their time for the movement for a People's Party. We DM'd them. We had a bunch of them call us, and we chatted with folks, and we wrote up this article for Substack, and then we started doing content on our show and all that kind of stuff. And that was what kind of really took us into like we need to call balls and strikes on the internet. Like these people were taken advantage of in a way that wasn't cool, and they don't have any person to talk to about this. So we'll give them the platform to talk to us. And then it was like, oh my gosh, like what's happening to the Young Turks? They just took $20 million from Jeffrey Katzenberg, and now they're talking about how homeless people are the devil, and Rick Caruso's awesome. And, then, the poly market stuff happens, and you've got a bunch of people leaving the left, and you're like, wow, man, our entire landscape is not exactly how we remember it as guys watching our phones in 2016, 2017. So we should go in and talk about how things have changed. And that's the way that we eventually got to the formula that we have now.
Yeah, man. Oh boy. Yeah. You're bringing up some repressed memories. No, just kidding. But, the whole thing with the People's Party was just so heartbreaking because that all started. I got to be honest about the whole thing. Like Convergence in 2017 was fucking inspiring. it was still one of the most inspiring things I've ever been to in my freaking life, because everybody was there. Everybody was there. And everybody just was like, how do we get under some kind of umbrella for change? Because united, like, we can really fucking do something. And then it just all slowly but surely completely fell apart.
We were the biggest believers, bro. We were like, that's the thing. We were just huge fans of all of this shit. We were just huge fans of all of it. And so, particularly Gavin. Gavin is like a goddamn anthologist of everything that's happened on Breadtube since like 2014. He's watched it religiously every single day. And I was just like kind of like a passive, I'll watch. I mostly read when I read the news, and then I've switched my media diet completely over the years of doing this, and now I watch everything that fucking happens on YouTube.
Well, you have to. I mean, you guys talk about it so much, you have to watch it.
Yeah, and but it's cool. It's just evolving times, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I feel like the sort of autopsies are really important, because it's just like, well, how do we move forward, and how do we prevent something like this from happening again? And it's like, because there were just a lot of what seemed to be a lot of good intentions, and I know amidst the people there were, but there was just a lot of shadiness going on behind the scenes. Clearly, like there just had to have been. And
I think that what it is that we've had to correct, and I think we are correcting as a left, is that people are done with the fake independent brand. They're done with the fake independent brand. And, if I can say that our show has helped in any direction on the left, I think we've helped make sure that people are shit scared of getting exposed for taking advantage of people and mismanaging their funds. And I think we can point directly to the Young Turks. We can point directly to the Young Turks. That's like our crown achievement. And people will be like, why do you make content about the Young Turks all the time? They are actually a massive company, you guys, and nobody covers them as a beat. It would be like if you were covering Coca-Cola, you would have shit to talk about all the fucking time, because Coca-Cola does a lot of bad things. And so you're like, well, why do you hate soda? I don't hate soda. I hate when companies do bad things, right? I love soda when the companies do good things and they take care of the planet, right? With the Young Turks, it was like, you can't tell people you're an independent voice for them, anti-corporate voice for them, anti-corporate media model, and then go and do the exact corporate media model. I mean, it was astonishing to do 5 rounds of venture capital funding, and you can't hide that shit from me, guys. One part I skipped over in my legacy was that I went to film school for 8 months, got my hopes and dreams crushed because nobody liked the short film I made, and then went to business school.
You got to make another one that no one likes, dude. What are you talking about?
That's what Gavin said. He's like, you fucking pussy, basically. Like,
he's right. You made one short. Of course, no one's gonna like your first short film.
Yeah,
that's freaking. I'd be like, I told one joke, people didn't like it, and then I told hundreds more that people didn't like, dude. It's like, yeah. But, get back in. We talked about that on your show once, about like you peeling off the film Band-Aid too, right? Didn't we?
Yeah, and we've done more documentary stuff for the Vanguard that has been like really fun to like itch that kind of a deal. And it was mostly just me being super melodramatic 18-year-old kid, but I ended up going to business school. I ended up working at a venture capital firm, the most disgusting fucking job you could possibly have probably in this country. I mean, a vulture is more honorable, I swear to God.
Sure.
And so I got to see that from the belly of the beast, because I was fucking broke, and I met this guy named Ed Frint, and he was like, do you want a job working for? I was like, fuck yeah, dude, I need any kind of a job. And then he's like, great, we're a venture capital firm. And I was like, show me what we fucking do here. So I know how that works. I know how shady it is. I know how as soon as you take their fucking money, they have control over you. I know that they'll be bitching up your fucking ass to make more money, that they'll be demanding that you restructure things. There's no way you could ever in a million years convince me that as a venture capitalist, like, I'm not putting my thumb on the scale. It's like, why did I give you $25 million then to put my thumb on the scale and to put my foot in your ass if you're not making any more money? That's what you do. I've seen the inside of that beast. And then that's why you see the decisions that they've made since then. Okay, I hate the homeless. I'm Jeffrey Katzenberg. You guys better change your homelessness policy. You guys better endorse Rick Caruso on air. You guys better blame homeless people for that Palisades fire. You guys better rename your studio the Polymarket Studio because you're not generating me enough ROI. You guys better take Aspiration Bank money from Joe Sandberg, and you better not say anything about how Joe Sandberg's going to prison for a $100 million fraud, which you told your audience to invest their money in that guy's bank. That's why they're doing the chapter advisory, which was founded by Vivek Ramaswamy and JD Vance, and their venture capital firm, to sell Medicare advisory. And that's why they don't say they support Medicare for all anymore. And that's why they don't say they support a public option anymore. They say they support the government negotiating drug prices. It's all because of that money. And I feel like it was a major news story that just got slept on because nobody, frankly, and I don't put this as like a slight on anybody, but it's because they were so big and they were so powerful. Nobody wanted to take a shot at Cenk because he's vindictive as fuck and he's mean and he'll try and ruin your fucking career. Everybody just pretended that that wasn't happening and that he was still independent media, and their audience felt mammothly betrayed. And so now it's woken people up to the fact that, hey, if you do that, there are going to be these knucklehead fucking kids that come out of the woodwork and look up every single piece of paperwork you've ever signed and show it to their audience and be like, these guys scammed you. Got to be real careful when you do that. And I mean, now you've got Anna Kasparian like falling in front of fucking swords for Tucker Carlson, talking about how he's not racist and how he, you know, our theory is that they're going to support him when he gets into politics more directly, but that's for another day.
Well, I think it's all about audience capture, man. And here is here's an interesting addendum here. I don't know if addendum is the right word, but Katzenberg was not a Rick Caruso supporter.
He wasn't.
No.
Interesting.
At least according to everything online. I didn't ask the guy directly. I've never met the guy. I don't know him. But according to everything online, because like I went really hard in the paint on your show and elsewhere about the Caruso thing, because that pissed me off.
It was awful.
I was so pissed off about. I mean, some people said that I was too hard on Cenk about it at Status Quo. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. I don't know. Someone else can decide that.
I didn't think so.
But well, I justified why I was pissed off, and it's because and you look at what has happened in LA since, and I like Karen Bass as far as I can throw her. But if Rick Caruso was mayor right now, I mean, it'd be an absolute fucking horror show. Like it's like if you went on that guy's website and read what he was trying to do, which I did because that's what you're supposed to do when you live in a city and you're picking a fucking mayor. And you in any way were like, yeah, I'll vote for this. You're out of your freaking mind. And then because of like the bullshit Cenk Uygur was spewing, I would get people who identified as socialists on Twitter trying to justify Rick Caruso. And I'm like, dude, this is like pretzel logic to the freaking nth degree. Are you fucking kidding me? You know what this guy would have done if he was mayor? You know how he would have like, I mean, it just would have been a private playground for all of the investors and all of the venture capitalists, all the real estate moguls. And look, I'm not naive. They're going to get 95% of what they want with Karen Bass. But with him, they're getting 100% of what they want. And that 5% makes a huge fucking difference to every working person in the city. So it's like, how can you do the pretzel logic to justify that? Like, it's just fucking nuts. And yeah, I looked it up because I was curious. And apparently Katzenberg was a Karen Bass guy. That was too, because I remember at one point I said something like, I'm like, Cenk Uygur is the first person to go to the right of his donors. Like he's breaking new ground.
Yeah. And it is funny. We always throw out the name Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Jeffrey Katzenberg did give $20 million to the Young Turks. But what's crazy is a lot of people don't know that was only one of the rounds of their fundraising. They also did fundraising with 3L Capital, with Graycroft, with E Ventures, which is like an online investment company, or like they invest in online companies. And then in addition to WonderCo, which is the Jeffrey Katzenberg venture capital firm. So that's hilarious that they were even to the right of one of their donors on that. But I could imagine that someone like Graycroft, which is just a huge evil company, could have lobbied Cenk to make the switch instead. But yeah, good to note that we can't put that on Katzenberg.
Yeah, I mean, because I looked it up, and I mean, according to everything online at the time around the election, he was a Bass guy. So unless he switched up at the 11th hour, or if that was like false, he was not. But yeah, there could have been any.
Makes it even more insane, to be honest.
Yeah, because there was like a bunch of propaganda around, like, oh, well, if you're not a renter, you have to support Rick Caruso, because which is absolutely ridiculous. It's all nonsense. But anyway, I will be inviting Cenk on this show because I've had you on the show. I've had Hank Thompson on the show. So I've had a lot of people that had a lot to say about the Young Turks on this show.
I can't wait to listen.
Yeah, no, I gotta have him on. I gotta be like, hey man, like this is the opportunity for, us to talk about it and air it all out about
For
Caruso.
sure.
And also like, feel free to defend whatever you want to defend.
No, I'll be sat for that, Ron. The Silly and Billy will be watching.
Oh, good, man. Well, I got Silly and Billy in the crowd. Good. Love it. So what are kind of some future Vanguard plans? Well, let me ask you this first. Sure. As we're winding down here, did you guys expect it to turn into what it's turned into? I mean, you guys have really grown in leaps and bounds in the past couple years. Like how has that ride been?
Oh, dude, it's been it's been awesome, right? The Vanguard doesn't try and be cool, guys. Like, I've worked so many shitty jobs. All right. I got my first job when I was 15 years old, working at the AMC movie theater. I worked at fast food restaurants. I've worked at that fucking shitty ass venture capital firm. I worked at call centers. I did freaking everything. I was a bartender until pretty recently. So obviously it's like the coolest thing in the world to be able to do something that you actually love for work. And so, if anything, it really reinforces my like hardcore socialist perspective that like human beings do love work and that we are productive, but you have to give people the opportunity to, pursue what they're passionate about and not just be cogs in a machine. And, if you do give people freedom, then they're going to respond to that by being productive in their own way, however that manifests. And with us, it's been the show and we love to freaking do it, man. It's a huge, huge blessing. It's a privilege. We try and take it so seriously. We make sure that we don't exploit anyone along the way. Every clip that's edited, every thumbnail that's designed, everything that goes into planning, booking, Gavin and I do all of that because we think, it's only fair to do the legwork if you're going to, do the star strutting, and also just the fact that we have the time, we have the know-how. It's always how we've done it. So we try and like at least, stay true to our punk rock ethos. We've never read an ad. We never will, all those kinds of things. But yeah, dude, it's just been incredible. It's been so, wonderful. I mean, really, it feels surreal almost. And I'm sure you've kind of gone through this as a comic. You're like, wow, I feel like there's so many people in America who have no choice but to go to a cubicle and sit down and figure out how they're going to disassociate for 9 hours. And even, the fickle nature of it, or when I, read a bunch of comments about how people were mad at what I had to say, I'm like, at least I know that I'm doing something that's like authentic to me and I'm saying what I believe. And that I have found enough people who are, willing to let me do that for work. And I don't have to compromise any of my principles. It's like, wow, it's cool.
Right on, man. Well, in closing, plug away. Where can people go to watch the Vanguard if they're not already?
Yeah, dude. So over at the Vanguard, we're if you just type in the Vanguard on YouTube, you're going to see us or Call of Duty. So take your pick from there. Yeah, other than that, it's run by me, my homie Gavin. We've been homies since 5th grade, as we talked about. But yeah, we react to shit on the internet. The first hour of our show is always news. I feel like people might not catch that if you don't watch our live streams. First hour of the show is always news, topics du jour, raising awareness. If something big happens in Kansas City, or if one of our listeners emails us about something, we'll cover all that in the first hour. That's from 2 to 3 Central Standard Time. And then after that, we get into the gutter, as we say, and we, react to other people's political opinions.
Dude. Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys have, and especially in the past few years, you guys are like always one of my favorite shows to go on because you guys ask cool questions. And I think part of it is because we have similar interests that, I mean, beyond lefty politics. I mean, we have that in common, sure. But, we also have the other, like when I was really trying to get the word out about Left at Wall, you guys were among my favorite shows in that space to go on because, I know you and Gavin had insightful thoughts.
And everybody watch Left at Wall if you haven't. I imagine if you're watching Ron's podcast, you guys check that out. But that was super fun.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And you had Jello Biafra on this podcast, which is pretty cool, too.
Yeah, Jello. He talked for 3 hours. I had to edit it to 1. I released the unedited version for anybody who's a patron. If you want the unedited, Patreon.com. Well, that was the birth of this podcast, really. Like I had this idea for a while. I had stepped away from a lot of the YouTube stuff and was figuring out what kind of project do I want to do next, in addition to like the film stuff and stand up. And I had this idea, And then basically when Jello agreed to an interview, I was like, well, I guess I got to do this series.
Hell
if Jello
yeah.
Biafra is going to talk to me, I got to see where this thing goes. So, yeah.
Dude, that was a banger.
Thanks, buddy. Well, Zach, this was a banger too. And thank you so much for doing it.
Oh, hell yeah. Anytime, dude. Thanks for having me. And yeah, check out the Vanguard pod if you're listening.
That was Zac Polston. Check out the Vanguard. Check out all of his stuff. Oh, and by the way, next week, we are going to be doing an episode with Gavin, Zach's co-host. So we're going to get Gavin's side of the Vanguard origin, and then we can compare and contrast. So be on the lookout for that. Next week, we're going to hear from Gavin, the other half of the Vanguard. Music for the 1000 podcast is provided by Andrew Sexton. Be sure to check out his podcast, the Baywatching Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you're subscribed. Tell your friends. That helps get the word out about the show. And if you want to support the show on the sustainability end, you can do so over at Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Placone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of cool perks. You get insider information about film and events. I do patron-only Zoom hangs once a month. It's a really cool community, and that's all for give what you can level. Oh, and you get the 1,000 episodes before the release to the public. You get a pre-drop of every 1,000 episode. So that's patreon.com/Ron Placone. All right, we are almost at the top of another decade, 129. Getting close to 1:30, which again, that's the late lunchtime if you're at an office job. Just it's going to be, it's part of the journey here is trying to find quirky little things about each number. All right, catch you next week. Peace. Hey guys, Ron Placone here. Take your own 1,000 challenge. No, you don't need to interview 1,000 people, although if you want to do that, go for it. Your 1,000 challenge can be whatever you want. Maybe you want to call a friend out of the blue once a week. Maybe you want to read a book every month. Maybe you want to start a different garden every season. I guess that might be dependent on where you live. Look, the point of the challenge is taking on an endeavor that enriches your life in some way, and it can be measured. And then, of course, you do it regularly. That's what 1,000 is doing for me, and hopefully for you too. The main reason for this podcast and every podcast I've ever done is to build community. So take your own challenge. Then join our Facebook group. It's called 1,000 What's Your Challenge? ? That's 1,000 What's Your Challenge ? And post about what your 1,000 challenge is and the progress you're making. All I ask is that people be encouraging of each other's challenges. This is personal and vulnerable, so be cool. There's enough negativity on social media. We don't need to add to it. For those of you who aren't on Facebook, hopefully in the future we'll be expanding to places like Discord, Reddit, but for now, we're starting on Facebook. And again, that Facebook group is called 1,000 What's Your Challenge? See you there.